Welcome to the Black Resilience in Colorado Fund's Reflection on Impact and Gratitude. This session will be recorded and distributed in a follow-up email. You are welcome to submit questions during the presentation via the chat feature. We will try to answer any questions as they arise. Our staff will be making a list of all questions so that any that we don't have time to answer today will be addressed when we follow up with the webinar recording. If you would like to turn on subtitles or closed captions for this meeting, please click the button in the bottom right-hand corner on your Zoom screen and select Show Subtitle. You may also choose to show full transcript. Again, welcome to the Black Resilience in Colorado Fund's Reflection on Impact and Gratitude. Our opening photos share the process of the 2022 Juneteenth Mural Project, showcasing the work of local talented artists, directed by internationally known artist Thomas Detour Evans. You can see more of his beautiful mural masterpieces throughout the BRIC website or his own website at imdetour.com. We are going to have a great time today sharing some of BRIC's highlights with a few wonderful community partners. And to begin, I asked Javier Alberto Soto, President and CEO of the Denver Foundation, to share his reflections of the Black Resilience in Colorado Fund. Over to you, Javier.
Awesome. Thanks so much, LaDawn. Appreciate that. And thank you all for joining us for this exciting celebration this afternoon. We appreciate all of your many, many contributions as we celebrate all that BRIC has accomplished in 2 short years. As I think about 2 years ago and that summer of 2020, honestly, I'm not sure if I feel like that was 20 minutes ago or 20 years ago. 2020 was such an intense year, such a difficult year, probably the most intense and difficult year that many, if not most of us, ever experienced. And now 2 years later, we can clearly see that the impacts of the pandemic have been devastating. More so for communities of color. The disproportionate impacts of the pandemic are well known today to have affected communities of color in a more pronounced and significant way than other communities. But 2 years ago, our dedicated community partners, our team at the Denver Foundation, starting with LaDawn, they recognized that that was likely to be the case. And they immediately worked to mobilize resources as quickly as possible, especially to support those in our Black communities throughout Metro Denver, who again, we knew would be facing greater hardship as a result of the pandemic than other parts of our community. That rapid response has resulted now 2 years later in over $2 million in grants to Black-led and Black-serving organizations throughout Metro Denver. It's been through a community-led process that builds on the inherent strengths, assets, and resources of the Black community in Metro Denver. And it's been possible thanks to the generosity of so many of our partners, including our foundation partners, and so many of you here with us today. Now, I remember LaDawn and I, back 2 summers ago, talking about the launch of BRIC and spelling out an aspiration for BRIC, not just in terms of the impact that we could have locally and throughout the state, but frankly, building something that would be a national model and that others would seek to emulate. And I'm so proud to tell you today that that's exactly what has happened. We're seeing similar initiatives being picked up around the country and folks looking to replicate the power and the impact of BRIC in their own communities. And I think all of us should be incredibly proud of that. So on behalf of the Denver Foundation, congratulations, happy 2nd anniversary to everyone who has joined us today and who has helped to make this moment possible. Thanks so much. LaDawn, back to you.
Thank you, Javier. Thanks so much for your thoughtful and kind words. The Denver Foundation's initial and ongoing financial investments and relational support in and to the BRIC Fund is important to BRIC's stability, sustainability, and growth. And today's reflections are going to share that collaborative effort and spirit. So let's get into it. Let's share a couple of facts and share some updates about BRIC. First, I just want to remind you all of BRIC's mission. BRIC's mission is to be a perpetual resource that supports the growth and sustainability of Black communities in Colorado and beyond. BRIC's efforts include strengthening Black leadership and building the organizational capacity of Black-led and serving nonprofits. BRIC's a flagship funding entity and networking partner inside and outside of Colorado, as Javier has mentioned, working to increase donors and supporters of this work. BRIC is innovative and collaborative, working within the Black community and alongside other marginalized communities to address systemic racism and historic inequities. So first, we'd like to share a financial impact update. And I'm going to ask our team to share some slides. Since BRIC's inception in June 2020, BRIC contributions have totaled just over $3.2 million to date. And that's thanks to many generous contributions of BRIC's donors and community partners and supporters, our colleague or fellow foundations and other giving entities in our communities. Thank you so much for your support. And as we promised when BRIC first started, our initial goal was to raise $1.5 million and get $1 million out the door within our first year. And obviously we have done so and then some, because if you look at where the resources have gone out into the community, BRIC is very proud to share that over $2 million has gone out in grants and other supports to 136 nonprofit organizations supporting their work in BRIC's focus areas that include emerging needs, health, housing, economic opportunity, racial justice, and youth-led programs. And you can see on this slide here exactly how those dollars have gone out initially to Black-led and serving nonprofits across the Metro Denver area. And if you're in the know, you know that just recently, less than a week ago, we announced that we just made an additional $330,000 in grants to Metro Denver Black-led and serving nonprofits in these same focus areas. To add to BRIC's ongoing work, we're super excited to talk also about how BRIC provides support for leadership development and nonprofit organization capacity building. And those opportunities are richly done in partnership with other wonderful organizations in our community. And so now I'd love to take some time to talk to some of BRIC's community partners to shine a light on those programs. And we would be remiss not to have one of the first persons who was so excited about BRIC's establishment and looking for ways to partner, and that is Aaron Mirapol, who is the president and CEO of the Urban Land Conservancy. Urban Land Conservancy uses real estate to benefit urban communities by preserving, developing, and stewarding and managing permanently affordable housing and shared office space for nonprofits and mission-minded organizations in Metro Denver and surrounding communities. Hi, Aaron, I see you there. Thanks for joining us today.
You bet, thank you.
If you don't mind, please share a little bit about ULC and how and why ULC sought out a partnership with the BRIC Fund.
Well, thanks, LaDawn. Urban Land Conservancy has been around for 19 years. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. You mentioned our mission. We've done 49 direct investments in real estate. Again, a lot of that focus has been in communities where we're underserved communities, where we're also seeing the threat of displacement, of gentrification. In many instances, like how we got to meet and get to really know each other out at the old Holly Shopping Center in Northeast Park Hill, we use a land trust to protect the investment on the front end. So LaDawn, going back to 2009 and 10, when we were working really closely on the Holly, that was one of the key values that came up. People in the community, stakeholders, wanted to know that by making an investment here, it was for the long term. And so there we have a Boys and Girls Club and the Center for African American Health, both in separate 99-year ground leases. Again, protecting the vision of the stakeholders of the community who wanted to make sure this wasn't going to get redeveloped in 5 or 10 years. I would say, thanks to you, LaDawn, you have been a real leader in how we think about place-based real estate. And so I think you and I have been talking for years about what are other mechanisms or ways that we can support the work. And one of the things I know is that access to capital is always challenging. And when I say access to capital, I mean access to really low interest patient debt. We've been fortunate to be able to do that for our work. We would not be successful without having that really patient capital, that very low interest debt. And so when you were talking about BRIC prior to 2020, I mean, this is, let's be clear, like this idea is something you've been talking about for years, is how do we make sure that Black-led organizations have that access, not just to grants, but also to access to capital. So we initiated when BRIC was founded, we have provided $250,000 in low interest debt available to BRIC organizations who are coming, who need access to low interest capital. So we have lent out half of that, $125,000. We'll do loans up to $50,000. We'll do them up to 5 years. I think the maximum interest rate we charge on a longer, like on 5 years, is about 1.5%. Shorter term, we'll do a lower interest rate. But I think what we recognize is that, again, that access to capital to do, say, an improvement in your building, to buy some type of, software or computers, things that really are building your capacity, we want to support that. And so our goal is obviously not just to have our 250 out there, but we want to get other folks to lend into BRIC as well. We think it's a really important opportunity for traditional banks, et cetera, but that they need to be able to lend at that low interest rate. So again, I know we're seeing a very different world today in the finance markets where interest rates have gone up dramatically. That's not the case with BRIC and the loan fund. It is at those 1% and 1.5%, and it's fixed. So it's a fixed interest rate, which means it's not going to go up. And that's, I think, a critical part to the work.
Right. So Aaron, just really quickly, and I know you kind of mentioned this, but I want to get a little bit more from you, is what do you think that the access to these type of dollars means to the organization, to these Black-led and serving nonprofit organizations, particularly those that are kind of at the cusp of an evolution moment in how they serve the community and increasing their impact, and maybe even in planting roots physically in community?
Well, there's a couple of things. I think a lot of, I ran a very, very small nonprofit, and I remember what it was like to just to be able to kind of move quickly to deal with payroll, to be able to make sure you could pay your staff, to be able to know that there was a resource that you could move quickly on. And so what I would share with you is we don't want to have the loan fund as something that is, how should I say, cumbersome. There are too many kind of programs or funding mechanisms which have long applications and all of that. So one of the key things about the BRIC Loan Fund is that it's one page. It's a really straightforward application. And to me, that's part of the story, right? Is that we don't want to be part of the problem. We want to be part of how we can get access, get that capital out there quickly. That's really critical. So timing, to me, in the work, I've been doing this work for over 30 years, timing is a central piece. And so if you have a partner who can turn around and get capital out in 30 days, that's important. And so I'm not sure if I'm answering directly that question, but I'm just saying when a nonprofit is on the cusp, they need to know that they have partners who can move quickly, that they're not going to be held up on funding 6, 9 months, 12 months out. They need to know that in 30 days, they can access capital quickly. And so I think that's a really critical part of what we can do in this partnership.
I don't think I could have said that any better. So you did a great job in answering the question. So let me give you maybe a final opportunity, to give you 30 seconds or less to share some words of encouragement for financial institutions seeking ways to increase capital resources to Black nonprofits. What would you say? What might your commercial be for that?
Wow, the commercial is much bigger than anything I have to say, LaDawn. I think, we as a state are at a really unique opportunity. You are involved, I know, on some state legislation about accessing some of the American Recovery Funds, the ARPA funds. But we as a state, we as a local jurisdiction, Denver, we have access to capital that we've never seen before. And so I think this opportunity to be partnering with our local jurisdictions, with our state, to get these ARPA dollars, these federal dollars out to organizations like the BRIC members, that to me is a critical opportunity. Again, just in the affordable housing world, we're seeing over $600 million coming through the state, through federal dollars, to support affordable housing, a broad spectrum from permanent supportive housing all the way up to home ownership. That's more than 30 seconds, but I just want to say that is this, I think we are really at this key opportunity of how BRIC members can get access to those dollars along with the support we're providing.
Thank you so much, Aaron. I could not have said it better, and you were just over 30 seconds, but I won't charge you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your leadership. Thank ULC for the partnership in the BRIC Loan Fund. We're excited, and as you said, we've only loaned out half the money. So there is opportunity for folks to take advantage of this unique opportunity within the BRIC Fund. And we, again, just want to thank ULC for the partnership in this work.
Thank you.
And so as I said, ULC is helping us to support building the capacity of Black-led and serving nonprofits in the Colorado community. And what a perfect segue to our next amazing community partner, who is an amazing new executive director who has heeded a greater call for her leadership and giving. And her name is Tanika Ship, Executive Director of Queenship. And just a little bit about Tanika. Tanika has 10 years of facilitation experience in adult and youth education and 8 years of experience in community-based philanthropy. As the co-founder of Sisterhood of Philanthropists Impacting Needs, or SPIN, a Black women's giving circle here in Colorado. She is also a recent graduate of the BRIC Fund's Executive Directors of Color Institute. So I want to welcome Tanika.
Perfect. Thank you, LaDawn.
Hey, Tanika.
I am here. So glad to be here. Hi, everyone. Like LaDawn said, I am a new executive director. And at Queenship, our mission is to empower all young women, including queer, trans, and non-binary students. And so with our organization, we focus on a holistic approach that includes leadership development and a strong emphasis on mentorship and community engagement. So the goal for our program is to develop emotionally intelligent and civically minded leaders who contribute to their communities. Our program specifically targets girls of color, Black girls of color, because most organizations really don't focus on our young girls. There are many organizations that do focus on boys. So we work with the school partners. We push into schools from 5th grade all the way up to 12th grade, working with young women specifically. We only launched in December of 2021, but we currently have 5 school partnerships, which I am ecstatic about. And we are currently in the process of running a successful summer camp out in Aurora currently. We have between 35 and 40 students showing up in community. We have parents who show up on a daily basis and pour into our young people. And with our summer camp program, we are employing, I think it's 7 to 10 young Black men in community. And we wanted to really focus on young Black men to go ahead and dispel those stereotypes around our young Black men in community. So even though my program focuses on young women, I wanted to be strategic and mindful on making sure that I incorporated our young Black kings into our program also.
That's amazing, Tanika. I mean, to think that you just started this organization in December. And of course, prior to that, you were in the Executive Directors of Color Institute, and you are a recent inaugural grantee of the BRIC Fund. So can you talk to us a little bit about the impact of BRIC and our programs have had on you and your organization?
110%. Going through the BRIC program, our class was probably one of the most unique classes because we went through during the pandemic, like at the height of the pandemic, at the height of the racial distress in our country, what had happened with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and to be in that space so often with so many like-minded individuals, and for BRIC to open that space for us to talk and heal, because it didn't turn into work. It became a place where we had opportunity for our own social emotional health. And so I want to thank you and the leaders of that class for even allowing that time and space for everything that we were kind of experiencing as leaders of color in our community. So I'm glad you asked that question, because I think I told you recently, one of the reasons I launched Queenship came out of going through Executive Directors of Color. We were in the class one day virtually, and my former director, Executive Director, Grant Jones, who was over the Center for African American Health. And I volunteered and I worked there for about 3 years. And when he pushed into the class, he was like so excited to see me. He was like, and I'm so excited that Tanika has her own nonprofit. At that time, I was a leader in a nonprofit, but didn't have my own nonprofit. And so just him saying that planted a seed in me that has led to what Queenship is today and the growth that we are gonna continue to see. And with some of the funding that I got, you know, I've already spent it in my head, LaDawn. So thank God for that funding, because now Queenship is in a position to hire our first part-time employee so that I can have some support going forward, because an organization, small organizations like mine, cannot sustain and thrive with one person at the helm. So just exciting to be able to onboard another person to the Queenship team. We will also be purchasing work and building out our own curriculum. So I am hiring a young woman who describes herself as feminine and queer, Black woman, and she will be pouring in and helping me create a curriculum specific to the community that I'm targeting within school partnerships. It will also give me an opportunity to sustain my office space in Aurora that I was just able to secure a few months ago. So with that funding, it has been able to propel and sustain Queenship for future endeavors and position us to put in for larger grants. So it's just been a blessing to get that email. And if I could do a cartwheel, I probably would have.
Well, we don't want you to hurt yourself. But
I just did a little happy dance instead.
Okay. No, that's great. And I'll just say for, on behalf of the BRIC Fund, to have organizations like yours that are homegrown, that are listening to the community, the needs of the community, and answering that call and bringing your full self. I mean, you've talked about this in the Executive Directors of Color Institute, of how creating the space to bring your whole self as a woman of color to the work is critical in how you engage young people and how you create impacts and how you even talk about the work and find cultural and historical connection with the families in the community that you serve. So we're very excited to support Queenship, particularly in your inaugural year, because I know that that's also a time where, you're not quite sure what's going to happen. And so we hope that, the support through the grant is helpful, as well as what you gained out of the Institute. Tanika, so kind of like, you're in your inaugural year, thinking forward, how do you envision BRIC supporting you and Queenship when you're thinking about thriving in Colorado's Black landscape?
I believe BRIC is 110% what we need for our community. Organization that is dedicated 110% to supporting Black-led and Black-serving organizations, and to step out there and be so bold to say that. And not worry about, those ramifications and the feedback from other communities. I think just having BRIC to lean on, and for BRIC being an example for other organizations across the nation, is just amazing. I think how BRIC can show up for me is creating opportunities like EDCI, but like an ongoing maybe alumni network for those of us who have completed that program, maybe a check-in space that we can come into, even just place for all BRIC fundees and the EDCI graduates. I think, like I said, when I went through EDCI, just having a space of people who looked like me, who were going through the same thing at the same time, and being able to talk about those different struggles and providing that feedback. And I think we had it, and now we're graduates and we're back into the day-to-day. And I think just a space where we push in and really get that support some more, I think would be beneficial for all of us. And I see a lot of my graduates in community all the time. And that was something that Herman White and I were just talking about recently at Juneteenth. And we're like, we're always in the work. And it would be great to have a safe, supportive space to show back up.
Well, guess what? We're going to answer you all's request, and you don't even know it. So in September, we're actually asking all of our EDCI alumni and current participants to gather in person for a leadership summit so that you all can reconnect in person, because we know that the virtual class, was a little struggle for us to be in virtual space together for 2 years, but we did it. But to be able to come together and again, create that atmosphere of caring, learning, and sharing that is really at the core of what the Institute is about. So surprise, and there's a present. But we're super excited about that, and details will soon be shared. So just know that that's happening. So Tanika, just kind of in closing, this is your inaugural year. Where are you and your organization headed from here?
That song, Ain't No Stopping Us Now. We're on the move.
Absolutely.
So
yes.
I think where I want to be now is just stay where we are with the 5 school partnerships, really run that curriculum and flesh out all of those things, onboard new people, new community partnerships. Like I just really solidified a partnership with Pacific Western Bank, where they will push across all 5 schools and lead financial literacy programming, which I think is really huge for our young people to learn. But just trying to sustain the program for another full school year and onboard new community partners and staff so that I'm not always the face of it, but once I can do that, I think it's no stopping us, and we're going to continue to grow and thrive and be able to implement some of the other programming that I kind of talked about in my RFP.
That's amazing, Tanika. I mean, so many milestones in such a short amount of time, but I mean, what better leader than Tanika Ship to lead Queen Ship? I mean, it all goes together.
Yeah, listen, I'm gonna be selling Queen Ship merch if anyone wants to support.
Excellent.
Get a Queen Ship for your young queen or young king. Little plug there.
Thank you, Tanika. Hey, no shame in this game.
No problem.
No problem.
I know.
Thanks so much for joining us today and sharing your story. And Queenship is just one of many nonprofits in our Colorado landscape that is led and serves communities of color seeking resources to meet the needs of their respective communities. And I'm really excited to talk to our next guest, because As BRIC has evolved, so have our opportunities to partner with other communities of color philanthropic organizations. And I'm beyond thrilled to be joined now by Carlos Martinez, the president and CEO of the Latino Community Foundation of Colorado. Welcome, Carlos.
Thanks, LaDawn. Pleasure being here and having time to chat with you today.
I am so excited that you are here. Yay! If you would please share with our folks that are here with us today about the mission and the work of the Latino Community Foundation of Colorado.
Sure, thanks, LaDawn. The Latino Community Foundation was created 15 years ago, but it's only been about 3 years since we've really been on our own as a standalone community foundation. Our mission is to work hand in hand with our diverse communities to create culturally responsive strategies that build influence, equity, and opportunity for all Coloradans. We carry out our mission through like 3 buckets. The first one is building capacity. A lot of our Latino nonprofits struggle and basically live from one grant to the next and never really have the resources to be able to invest in building a strong foundation by which they can grow, prosper, and thrive from. So a lot of our work is about investing in leaders, investing in nonprofits, and investing in communities. And within that area, we have a capacity building initiative right now. It's a cohort initiative every 3 years. Right now, we have 22 organizations in this program, and we're investing $2 million into these 22 organizations, as well as providing them with training, coaching, and opportunities for them to network and share and learn from each other. We also have a loan fund, just like you. So we also have a loan fund to be able to provide capital to a lot of nonprofits. We give grant loans from $10,000 to $250,000, 0 to 2% interest, 5-year payback. And like Aaron was mentioning before, I mean, our organizations never have access to working capital. And without that kind of access to working capital, it is hard to be innovative. It is hard to grow because most of our funding that we receive from foundations or even government is all program related funding. And so we rarely have the resources to do the kind of strategy development, infrastructure building, staff investments that we need in order to grow. And then the third area, we also have in monthly roundtables with our leadership as well. Our second area is funding. We have a grant making arm called Ayuda Colorado, which we provide capacity building and other types of grants on an annual basis to our community. We give about anywhere between $250,000 and $500,000 in grants on a given year. And there's a big fluctuation there because we're not an endowed foundation. LaDawn, as you know, we're just like BRIC. And so we have to raise all the money every year to be able to invest back into our community. Right. So those always comes with, challenges about how much money you're able to raise every given year. And then our third bucket is connecting community. In our connecting community, it's really critical because very often we don't have those opportunities to really connect with each other. Right. And so we have a Latina Power Summit that we do every year. We have an Our Story Forum that we also produce, which really helps to highlight our local leaders throughout Colorado, be able for them to share their stories, their lived experiences, and the work that they're doing in their communities. And that connection really allows them to connect with other folks, whether they're other EDs or community leaders, as well as folks in philanthropy, government, or in other areas, or just connect with the Latino community, which I think is really key because that connecting community section is about building collective power. And I think as we look at the work that we all do, or folks from communities of color, we need to really continue to build our collective power to be able to have that collective voice that can go ahead and provide collective action for change. So those kind of like the areas where we do a lot of work around.
Yeah. Well, Carlos, I know since the very beginning when when I was, BRIC was first established, you were one of the first persons to connect with me, and we've kind of been informally joined at the hip in you sharing the journey of LCFC, in your, initially being a fund at the Rhodes Foundation to now being a fully independent community foundation. And so I want to thank you first so much for a lot of, your guidance and all those little wisdom nuggets that you've been giving me along the way and lending to BRIC. But I would like you just to briefly talk about, when we talk about, I segued into this whole notion of a partnership, which, when I think about it, if I could title this for BRIC in a newspaper article, it would say BRIC co-invests $5,000 for a return of $35 million, which is pretty amazing. So can you talk a little bit about the Communities Lead, Communities Thrive Coalition and the proposed bill that this group works so hard to carry forward?
Sure. Thanks, LaDawn. Well, I think it really all started back in, towards the end of 2020, when I was just completely frustrated to see the billions of dollars that Colorado was receiving, but how very little of that, or if any, was really making its way to our communities, to our small nonprofits to help. Our organizations didn't get PPP. They didn't get all this other infrastructure dollars that were coming down.
Right.
And that really led me to advocate for communities of color to be able to have resources come to our communities, our small nonprofits, to be able to go ahead and have the resources to build the right infrastructures moving forward and invest in their organizations and their folks. So as you know, LaDawn, back, I started this work back in February of last year. And then I think we started having conversations in May of last year. And I said, we got to do something, LaDawn. And that's where we created this Communities Lead, Communities Thrive Coalition. It's a coalition comprised of BIPOC and LGBTQ nonprofits. We have about over 100 small nonprofits who are part of the coalition and really came together to figure out how we develop a legislative strategy, also a strategy with the governor's office, to be able to direct some of those ARPA dollars that were coming in, but were never making their way down into our communities. So BRIC, ourselves, and a couple of other entities put in $5,000. We put our money together. We raised the money that we had to hire the lobbyist to help put together the infrastructure. And as you know, LaDawn, from like September of last year up until May, we met every Monday to strategize, to think things through, but also, listening from our organizations. And I think the fact that we have BRIC, and BRIC has its pulse on the Black nonprofit sector, and where they can really use support and help support their organizations, and taking that information along with our information, the information from the LGBTQ community, the Native American community, the Asian American community,
right,
and take that and create a bill. Because I think that's the other thing that I'm really proud of. We have a bill that specifically sets out that this money is to really help those communities that were greatly impacted during COVID, and that for smaller organizations, and that these monies also will be distributed through intermediaries who have their pulse on these communities, who have a track record of serving these organizations. And so that when we look at making the allocations of grants for these organizations, it's done in a way where it eliminates a lot of that kind of like that red tape or that application for funding that sometimes just discourages a lot of our organizations to be able to apply because they're so complicated. And I think fortunately, organizations will be able to apply for up to $100,000 in infrastructure and capacity building. So it's not program related dollars, it's capacity and infrastructure dollars, but it can't be more than 30% of your annual budget. So any organization who has a budget of about $345,000 a year can apply for the maximum of $100,000. Anyone below that, it's up to about 30% of their annual budget.
Yes, and Carlos, I mean, this is a game changer for the organizations that are a part of the coalition, you know, these marginalized, led and serving organizations to have this type of access. So tell us, what is next for the coalition, and what do you envision for the BRIC LCFC relationship going forward?
Well, I think we've talked about this, LaDawn. This is just the start of it. You know, it's so
Absolutely.
wonderful to be able to come together for the first time and have such a big win. But what this has really done is really has shown when we bring our collective power together, what we can do. So we will continue the coalition, and we will be looking every year to see how it is that we can work with this vast group of folks throughout the entire state of coming together, and how we flex our voice, how we flex our power to be able to direct more resources to our communities, to our organizations, so that we have the determination about how we want to go ahead and create the kind of communities that are needed
Right.
for our communities, which is so key. So we will be determining our destiny through the coalition.
That's amazing. I'm excited about the what's next, even though we're not quite sure what next is, but it's going to be good, whatever it is.
Of course it is. I mean, I would love to be able to have this kind of fund every year. You know, or at least, you know, I'm not sure about 35 million because I was a large federal dollars, but that we have access to these dollars and these opportunities that have really never been afforded to us before, to be able to have them so that we can go and determine our destiny for our communities, our organizations. And we're not relying on how much money we're able to raise, or who's going to invest in us, or who's not, but it's all about self-determination.
Absolutely, Carlos. And just maybe in closing, I just want to say, you know, we shouldn't sweep it under the rug that this is actually also something that is a national model setting. I know that you've been out talking to other organizations and groups across the country about this entire process and how we got to, you know, this bill being passed and these dollars going out. So if you just want to give a shout out very quickly to, you know, the national status of this work, please do so.
Well, we have a lot of visibility around this, and it really comes down to the following, which we're really proud of the coalition. It's about being big ideas, being bold, and being courageous, being courageous and asking for what we need, not accepting the crumbs, but really looking about this is the kind of money we need to really invest in our communities. And I think I think next week I'll be in California, the next month I'll be in Texas, talking about the work of the coalition. And I think to know that we had that done here in Colorado is amazing.
Absolutely, Carlos. And I want to thank you so much for your leadership. And again, your constant mentorship and partnership and friendship in this work. You know, one of the things I remember that you said to me early on is that this is not an either or when it comes to Black and Brown in this work. We're in this together, and us working together leverages even greater opportunities for us to actually achieve the equitable communities that we deserve.
Exactly.
Exactly. So thank you so much for being here and carrying the torch forward and sharing what now has become a national model. And of course, your work with LCFC, you know, goes without saying, is amazing and impactful in the community. So glad that we're partners.
Thanks a lot, LaDawn.
Thank you so much for being here. Now, typically I would segue into another live guest. But in thinking and shifting into what Javier mentioned earlier about BRIC being, I wouldn't say the first, but one of the first Black funds operating with grants and other capacity building initiatives and programs, and sharing what we've done with BRIC across the country. And if you see this map here, you know, when we started out, there might have been 4 or 5 Black funds or foundations in the country that we knew of. And now, 2 years later, BRIC specifically has shared its work, shared kind of the behind the scenes, the tools, the resources, the ways in which we have created and evolved in this work with at least 50 other Black funds and or initiatives across the country. It's something that we're very proud of and are proud to consider ourselves to be a national model, or better yet, a blueprint. Because I think when you say model, you don't want people to do it exactly the same, because no community is exactly the same. But a blueprint gives you a strong base to build on. And you can add those special nuances and special ways of working that are unique to the culture, to the local community that the fund or initiative serves. So one of those amazing funds is the Big Equity Fund in Greensboro, North Carolina. And that work is led by Ethan Lindsay, the Vice President of Grants and Initiatives of the Community Foundation of Greater Greensboro. Ethan has been a catalyst for change in philanthropy for over 25 years and continues to inspire donors of color to use their philanthropy to create the communities that they wish to see. Now, Ethan would have been here, but who knew? Simultaneously, as we're on this webinar together, Ethan is receiving the Triad Business Journal's 2022 Leadership in Diversity Award. But true to Ethan's commitment and care to this work, he was kind enough to record some remarks for today's webinar. So I'm going to ask our crew to please share his remarks.
Philanthropy. BRIC has been an inspiration to the work I've been leading here in Greensboro with the Big Equity Fund, or what is affectionately called the Black Investments in Greater Greensboro Equity Fund. Big has a similar mission to you all, to BRIC, in that we want to make an impact on Black communities using Black philanthropy. Our mission and our vision is to use collective giving and collective capital and collective resources to address disparities in the Black community. We're using a collective giving model inspired by BRIC. The inspiration came from the fact that we know that we are not the only group out here. You all are trailblazers, but you also have people outside of Colorado looking at your work, being inspired by your work, but also working collaboratively with your leaders. We've been fortunate to have LaDawn share words of wisdom, inspiration with our own steering committee. So it's with gratitude that I'm able to return the favor. Do not take it for granted that what you're doing is having an impact. And more importantly, it is clearly a need for Black people to come together and use their collective philanthropy, its power, its leadership, but also, if we do not take the mantle of leadership and invest in Black serving organizations, and more importantly, Black led organizations, then who will do it? So continue to be resilient, and you're well on your way. Someday you'll be remembered by people who you will never meet, but they will know that you love them and you were resilient by taking the steps that you've taken to create BRIC. Thank you, continued success, and remain resilient.
Wow, powerful words. The only thing I'm sad that I'm not able to chat with him about the great work that they're doing in Greater Greensboro through the Big Equity Fund. Before we move forward, because we have just a couple more things and we have a really exciting announcement that we want to share with you. There were a couple of questions in the chat. I do want to thank my BRIC Advisory Committee members who I believe are answering questions in the chat. So thank you to you all for stepping up, stepping in, and making sure that our folks are hearing or getting responses to their questions. I do believe someone asked about the next grant cycle, which opens mid-September and closes mid-October. Those dates are on the BRIC website at www.bricfund.org. Under our grant making tab, you can look there for more information and our guidelines. I also understand that there were a couple of questions about other Black foundations or funds in Colorado. I do believe that some of those have been shared, the Aya Foundation, More Impact. There's also the Eulipians Fund, which is housed at the Denver Foundation that specifically focuses on the arts in the Black community. We'd be happy to connect you or we'll put those links in the chat, or it will also be included in the email when we share this recording from today's webinar. So we've heard so many exciting things about what BRIC is doing through our loan fund, through our collaboration with the Communities Lead, Communities Thrive, working in policy and advocacy space. We've also heard from one of our most recent grantees, as well as a graduate of our Executive Directors of Color Institute, and just are so excited to have all this work as a part of BRIC's efforts to, one, support Black leadership, to also support Black-led and serving nonprofit organizations, and I would say more holistically to address systemic oppression and racism, dismantle it, and help to create the equitable communities that we all so richly deserve. Well, all of that work takes a little support from our community. And so just to take a few moments about ways in which you can support and engage with the BRIC Fund. And you will see here on this slide that has been so beautifully put together. Of course, one of the ways that we talk often here at the BRIC Fund is to utilize your 5 T's. And those 5 T's are time, talent, treasure, testimony, and social ties. So there are, of course, a myriad of ways that you can support BRIC. One is to donate to BRIC, and you can find the donate button on the BRIC website. And our website is dropped in the chat. The other way is to use your testimony, to use your voice, share the work of BRIC. Maybe some of it is lived experience. You actually are a grantee, a nonprofit leader who has worked with BRIC or has been a part of our institute. We'd love for you to share that experience with others, to let them know that BRIC is here, that we want to support, and there are ways for folks to be supportive of our work. So to share our website, our social media, and or your own story, as well as our e-blasts and articles that are always coming out. So please make sure you sign up for that email list. Also, it's not just only about supporting BRIC directly, it's also supporting the Black landscape in a much broader sense. And so one of the ways to do that is to support Black-owned businesses. And of course, you can find out more information. I mean, we've seen several lists, particularly around Juneteenth, in ways that you can support the Black community in Colorado by supporting Black entrepreneurs, Black small and larger owned businesses, as well as Black events and opportunities in our community. If you are a Denver Foundation fund holder, you can reach out to your relationship manager, and they'll be happy to share more information about BRIC, our work, and or our grantees and ways that you can support our efforts in the community. And finally, if you're interested in some of our programs and want to know more details, please feel free to contact me at lsullivan@bricfund.org. And I'll be happy to get back with you and talk with you about the different programs and the ways that BRIC is working in the community. So we're finally at this amazing moment where we get to share some exciting news about what's coming up for BRIC in the month of August. For all of you who don't know, August is Black Philanthropy Month. And with that being said, since BRIC's inception in June of 2020, we have had a very generous partner who has agreed to match any donations made to BRIC in the month of August, from August 1st through Black Giving Day, which is August 28th. They will match dollar for dollar up to $50,000 from any donors who choose to make a contribution to BRIC to support our efforts. So again, that matching opportunity starts on August 1st and it goes through August 28th, which is Black Giving Day. And then as a part of our celebration and recognition of Black Philanthropy Month, we have an amazing announcement today. And that is BRIC will host an in-person event on August 23rd, 2022. And if we could put that slide up, please. We will be hosting in conversation Nicole Hannah-Jones, the author of the 1619 Project. She'll be here in Denver. We're partnering with the Denver Art Museum to host a conversation with Nicole Hannah-Jones. There'll be more details soon released in July about tickets and about tickets and other opportunities to engage in some pre-event activities that day. Also, please note that we will have opportunities for those who would like to be a sponsor of this event. You can contact me at lsullivan@bricfund.org because we do have some available sponsorship opportunities. We are so excited to have Nicole Hannah-Jones come here and not only share, of course, her amazing insights about the 1619 Project and the over 400 years of Black experience here in America, but also connected to that, I would say in recognition and in complement Black Philanthropy Month, we also want to talk about the contributions of African Americans to our own progress and to the broader landscape of America. So we're very excited to host this conversation, and we hope that you share with your friends and family and anyone who wants to hear about this amazing event and the opportunity to be there live and in person on August 23rd. So we're a little early, but that's okay. We're gonna give you the gift of a few minutes, but I do want to make a couple of appreciation and thank yous before I leave you today. And that is, I want to make sure that we thank our donors, our peer funders, our community partners, and last but not least, the BRIC Advisory Committee members for countless hours, unique opportunities of partnership, great efforts on the front lines in our communities, and of course, the financial or those 5T investments that folks have made to make BRIC such a tremendous success and impact thus far in our journey of 2 years. We have a saying as a part of BRIC that we're building Black communities brick by brick, but we wouldn't be able to do it without the kindness and contributions of everyone who has joined us here today and beyond, who have supported BRIC in every effort that we've made thus far in our journey. Thank you so much to our community partners. Again, I just can't say enough about this coming from an idea 9 years ago to being what it has become today, 2 years later, of being able to mobilize over $2 million in resources, but I would say in an invaluable amount of time and talent, testimony, social networks, those 5 Ts, we can't even count how much how invaluable it's been as an investment in the Black community here in Colorado and beyond. I just want to say thank you so much. This journey is not over. So just because the webinar is doesn't mean that we still don't have work to do. Thanks so much for joining us today. And I look forward to seeing you, talking with you, and maybe even sharing a glass of lemonade or of some sort at that August 23rd event with Nicole Hannah-Jones. Have a wonderful afternoon. And again, thank you for supporting BRIC and building Black communities brick by brick.